Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I just wanted to continue the thread that I was on in my previous video where I talk about the benefits of referring to the solar return of the Davison chart in order to track when a couple meets and when they get married, and how we can locate specific patterns that we can possibly reference in other charts if we want to clarify certain timing measures. So in my previous video I looked at the chart of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and very briefly Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and today I'm going to look at an average non-celebrity couple in order to affirm some of the brilliant patterns that I have found. So this is the solar return of a couple who is unmarried, and therefore I'm only referring to the year that they meet in order to kind of demonstrate my methodology in this case. So this is the solar return for when they meet, and as always we have a Pluto influence on one of the angles. I'd also like to make note of the fact that we have a grand trine with Destin and Juno, but that's neither here nor there. So we have Pluto in the 7th house aspecting the ascendant, and again I'm a Vedic astrologer, and so the opposition and the conjunction are on sort of on mutual ground. I look at them with a very similar gaze. So Pluto on the ascendant telling us that there is a transformation in the relationship, right? We also have Venus and Saturn, and I look at Venus and Saturn in a way, you know, because my practice is devoted to the timing of events. To me, when I read it from that perspective, Venus and Saturn in the timing of this relationship is telling me that there is a commitment happening here. Now, take that however you would like. If you read Venus and Saturn conjunctions differently, you know, by all means I'm open to interpretation. To me it's a positive thing. I don't view it as that heavy of an aspect, because again, aspects are all relative. An aspect is an aspect because it depends on other planets, and it produces a constellation, a network of relationships and dynamics that you need to read together. Anyway, so you have Pluto in the 7th house. You have the North Node in the 1st house. And because I am a Vedic astrologer, I look at the North Node, and to me what is important about that is not the node itself. I mean, the position of the node is important, right? In the 1st house, things are opening up, right? But what is opening up? You know, you have to look at the dispositor. And here we have the moon, and the moon is an aspect to Jupiter. And as we said before, Jupiter expands things, right? So feelings are expanding, right? The relationship, Pluto in the 7th, the relationship is transforming. The first lord, which is also, which how, you know, and the Rahu is in the 1st house, you know, the moon, feelings are expanding. Now, we also have this interesting Mars-Uranus connection. We talked last time about how we picked up on this pattern of, you know, when couples come together, we see Mars, we see Uranus, and we see Saturn kind of impacting the 1st, 10th, and 7th houses. And here we have it in the 10th, and this is the Western chart, by the way. But at this point, I just want you to look at this Pluto. I want you to look at the Moon-Jupiter relationship. I want you to look at the North Node. That's what I have in mind right now, as well as the Saturn conjunct the descendant. Okay, so I'm going to go over and I'm going to switch to sidereal. And now we have a different perspective of what's going on. It's the same event, but a different perspective. In this case, we have what we had last time in the previous video, where we have Pluto looking at the MC, transforming the status of the relationship. We also have Saturn looking at the MC, grounding the relationship, right? And we have Venus, this Venus-Pluto conjunction, right? It's all coming together to look at the MC. So there's a lot of energy being pulled toward the MC. So this is one hint that this is a year in which this couple may meet, right? If let's say you were given 5 solar returns, right, for one couple, and you were asked, tell me the year in which this couple met, you would want to look to the MC to see, is there something significant going on? And again, we have that here. You also have the Moon Pluto relationship repeating. But then we have the Mars Uranus in the 7th house. And if you remember, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had Uranus in the 7th house, and for them that was part and parcel with the fact that they were long distance. But this couple is not long distance, and yet they have Uranus in the 7th house. And it's interesting, I've ruminated on it, and I wonder if Uranus is a kind of manifesting planet. I wonder, Mars in the 7th house is a manifesting planet for a relationship. I do believe that. Because Mars, if you're familiar with Vedic astrology, Mars causes Argala, and in the 7th house in Aries, exalted, right? There is something going on here. Now, some of you might notice that it's at a 5-degree distance from the vertex. I'm not really looking at that right now. That's a bit far for me. I think it's notable. If we're looking at patterns, okay, the vertex in the 7th house, that's kind of interesting, and it's 5 degrees away from Mars. All right. That's not really my focus here. Again, I wanted to bring you back to the MC, and I wanted to bring you back to that Uranus in the 7th house, and that a lot of the times, in my research, I've found that when relationships manifest, there is often like a connection with Uranus. And maybe that's because Uranus, I think about it this way, right? When Uranus is in connection with the moon, 2 people are emotionally brought together. And so maybe in like a spontaneous, very powerful way, right? In a composite, it's kind of like a come as you are sort of thing. And so I wonder, that Uranus in the 7th, it's very notable, and I haven't pinpointed the definition yet, but if you know what it is, please let me know. We have Sun in the 5th house, just like we did before, right? The identity is in the realm of romance. It's also curious to kind of note that we have a very similar alignment in terms of housing with Meghan and Harry. Again, we have a Virgo ascendant like we did last time, right? And we have the Sun in Aquarius, and this is kind of interesting, right? Because the Sun is exalted in Leo, and Leo is the self, right? And so when the Sun is in Aquarius is the other, and so it's kind of interesting, right, to think about it that way, that the Sun in Aquarius is representing a multiplicity of selves. Right, whereas the Sun in Leo is just a singular self, but here it's 2 people coming together. So it's a multiplicity of self, and Aquarius is the multiple, whereas Leo is the single. So that's kind of interesting to note. So now I'm going to go back to tropical, and I'm going to do an overlay. Right, and so here we have vertex Pluto, right? We have Jupiter right at union, and I pay attention to asteroids when it's exact, when the aspect is exact. Here we have MC Saturn, right? So the status is one of a grounded relationship. Sorry about that. We have Venus at Jupiter, right? So the relation, and this is really affirming, right? Because before I kind of gestured to how some people view Venus and Saturn as kind of oppressive, but here we have that conjunction landing on Jupiter. So it's telling us that no, actually it's a very beautiful, almost childlike kind of love going on here, right? The love is expanding, right? The security, the loving security, right? Venus, Saturn, loving security is expanding. And then that's affirmed, right? This sort of exclusive, secure sort of thing is affirmed by the relationship of the MC to Saturn. So again, this is bringing us back to the point that the first thing we have to look at really are the angles, right? Where are the angles going? And sometimes, one angle will land somewhere important, the other won't really. I mean, here the ascendant is at 17 degrees. Cancer, what what is it really looking at? I guess it's kind of looking at that Jupiter, right? It's kind of looking at that Neptune maybe, but not that significantly. So you're gonna get a little, and other times you're gonna get a lot. But it really comes down to narrowing down year. And here we have a really great Davison, if you ask me. And so these aspects, when you have something like this, it's aspecting a Moon Jupiter conjunction, which is just fantastic. So it's gonna be positive. But yeah, so that's that. Now we're gonna switch to the sidereal. And here we have the moon on the vertex. So again, and this is 1 degree apart. We want to look at the vertex for timing, but only really when it's at a kind of 1 to 2, maybe 2, right? And maybe 2 degree difference. Now, I want to bring your attention to this. The ascendant is on the north node. This is another really important pattern that I've noticed in the solar return charts of couples when they meet or get married, right? It's the AC, the MC, the north node, Pluto, and Saturn. Relationships are forming with these 5 points, and Jupiter is often in the mix as well, but it bears a closer relationship to planets like Venus, to planets like the moon, than it does to the angles, though it can be in relationship to the angles, as we saw in the previous video where we had Jupiter in the 7th. Now, I imagine if this couple were to get married, we would have some sort of Jupiter relationship in the 7th, but they haven't gotten married yet. So there's that. But it, I really would love to bring your attention to, again, this ascendant north node position, where if we consider the north node a point of progress, right? I don't look at the north node as destiny. The north node is a natural malefic, so it will expand whatever it touches. The north node, it's not a planet, right? It's a void. It sucks in whatever it's beside. So if the north node is on the ascendant, right, and the ascendant is the physicality of the couple, right? Well, that's being expanded, right? So they're meeting. They're meeting in this case. And they're not only meeting because of that particular aspect, they're meeting because of number of aspects, right? The Pluto MC, the Saturn MC, the Venus MC, the Venus Jupiter, the moon vertex, all of these reasons. We also have the north node at 1 degree and karma at 4 degrees. It's a bit far, so I wouldn't look at this as kind of like a decision-making aspect. It's not really a qualifier, but it's good to have in mind in the background, right? And again, we have this Jupiter at 25 degrees, right on Union at 26. This has been affirmed for us twice now. So we know that there's a pattern. And I wouldn't usually pay attention to the to asteroid aspects, but because it's happening twice, then it's something to consider, right? Juno is transiting through the 7th house, right? Because that's what a solar return is when you overlay it on top of a natal chart. It's a transit, right? So that's also quite promising. So now that we've looked at the solar return, it's worth looking at the progressed composite. So this is the progressed composite for the day that they met. Here we have the moon 16 degrees Scorpio. So let's look at the actual composite. What's at 16 degrees Scorpio? Well, the ascendant is at 11. So we know that the moon is past the ascendant. We have union at 19 degrees. That's quite notable. 3-degree difference. Now, we have this sun MC Mars conjunction that happens in the composite 10th. And here we see that Mars, which was previously at 0 degrees, has now traveled to 15. So there's a 1 degree difference between each of these planets. And that's also quite notable. But really what we're getting here isn't a clear picture. We're only getting a hint. To get a clear picture, it's important that we look at the progressed chart. So here I've overlaid the progressed Davison on top of the actual Davison, and what do we notice? It's that the moon, right, the planet that we really want to look at when it comes to these progressions, is right on the ascendant. It's right on the ascendant the day they met. And then the actual ascendant is at 1 degree, and we have Pluto here at 3 degrees. So we know that there's going to be some kind of a cascade. There is room for more events to come. So perhaps when the ascendant hits Pluto, well, it's difficult to say, right? Perhaps they could get married. Perhaps they could get engaged. Perhaps they could break up, right? We're not really looking at that. What we're trying to focus on here is that the direction of the moon in the ascendant is not empty, right? I mean, imagine if all these planets here from the second house, from the first to like the sixth, were over the horizon line. If they were, in houses 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and the moon and ascendant were basically traveling through empty space. Now, they would have oppositions. That's true, but in my experience, I have found the conjunction to be far more useful in timing when it comes to the progressions than oppositions. So really, my focus here is, again, it's conjunctions. That's what I'm paying attention to. It is also worth noting that Juno here is at 24 degrees and the sun is at 25 degrees, right? That's very interesting. But I digress, right? So this was just a really, really short video to kind of help solidify what I was talking about in the previous video through a more grounded, real example. An example that isn't as, I don't want to say the word exceptional, but of course in the previous video, we had a member of the royal family, and then not like a totally regular person, but they weren't like a, it wasn't Angelina Jolie marrying a prince, which is perhaps more likely than a like a TV actress, which isn't to degrade TV actresses, but to simply suggest that there was a far bigger leap from one person to the other in that case, and there is here, right? Two people in very, very similar environments, very similar upbringings, very similar communities, who are more likely to meet than the previous couple. And so things are a bit more grounded in this case, but there is still a certain amount of legibility. Thank you.